The terminal at JFK was buzzing with the late afternoon rush flights boarding, rolling suitcases, loudspeaker announcements echoing across polished marble floors. Emily Watson stood near gate 23, one hand resting on her belly, the other gripping her small Dior purse. Her heart raced, not from the pregnancy, but from something deeper unease. She'd come to surprise her husband, Lieutenant Colonel Michael Grant, returning from a short mission. Instead, what she saw next froze her in place. Across the crowd, Mike wasn't alone. He walked with a young woman, tall, sleek. Her dark hair tied neatly beneath a flight crew cap. Emily blinked, thinking her eyes were playing tricks. But then she saw Mike's hand brush the woman's lower back. Her pulse thundered. "No," she whispered to herself. "He wouldn't." The woman laughed softly, slipping her arm around Mike's. Emily felt a rush of nausea that had nothing to do with her pregnancy. She stepped closer, clutching her Dior purse tighter, her heels clicking against the floor. The announcement for Flight UA-714 drowned out the blood rushing in her ears. When Mike noticed her, his eyes widened, not in joy or relief, but in sheer panic. "Emily?" he muttered. The woman beside him froze. "Who's she?" she asked. Emily's voice trembled. "I'm his wife." Gasps erupted from the onlookers. A few passengers stopped mid-stride, drawn to the confrontation. "Mike, what is this?" Emily's voice broke. "You told me you were on duty. You said you were flying home alone." The woman turned pale. Mike's jaw tightened. "Emily, go home. You're making a scene." "A scene?" Emily's tears welled. "You're holding her hand at an airport." Her voice echoed through the terminal. People lifted their phones. Somewhere, a camera shutter clicked. The young woman stepped forward, trying to calm things down. "Sir, maybe we should go." But before she could finish, Emily's shaking hand caught the edge of the woman's sleeve, pulling instinctively. The silk fabric tore with a faint rip. Mike's expression darkened instantly. "Emily," he shouted, grabbing her wrist. The shock of his grip made her flinch. "You're embarrassing me. I'm your wife," she cried, "and I'm carrying your child." For a second, everything stopped: the crowd, the noise, the movement. Then Mike did something no one could believe. In a blind burst of rage, he pushed Emily's hand away, his other hand shoving the woman backward, as if to prove dominance. The young woman stumbled, her dress tearing further until the strap snapped. She fell hard onto the floor. Gasps and screams filled the air. Someone yelled, "Call security!" Emily's knees buckled. She clutched her belly, struggling to breathe. The lights above blurred. A security guard rushed in. "Sir, step back." Mike froze, sweat dripping down his temple, realizing dozens of phones were now recording. The fallen woman whimpered. Emily tried to speak, but her vision darkened. She reached out, trying to find balance, her fingers brushing the cold floor tiles. Then, a firm, commanding voice cut through the chaos. "That's enough, Michael Grant." The crowd parted as an older man in a dark coat stepped forward. His silver hair shone under the fluorescent light, and his eyes, sharp, military, unyielding, met Mike's trembling gaze. "General Robert Watson," someone whispered. Emily's grandfather. Mike's face drained of color. "Sir, Robert's voice was calm but deadly. "A man who raises his hand to his pregnant wife dishonors the uniform." Emily, half conscious, heard those words before everything went black. Around her, cameras continued flashing. Mike stood frozen, his pride shattered, as security closed in, and in that single moment, the mighty colonel realized his entire world was about to collapse in front of everyone. When Emily Watson first met Michael Grant, he was everything. A young woman dreamed of a decorated Air Force officer with a steady voice, a clean smile, and the kind of presence that made people turn their heads when he walked into a room. Back then, he wasn't just a man in uniform. He was the promise of stability, safety, and forever. She was 24, a newly graduated fashion designer working in a small Manhattan studio near Bryant Park, stitching dreams into silk gowns for women she would never meet. Mike had come in one rainy afternoon to pick up a custom uniform jacket tailored for an upcoming ceremony at the Plaza Hotel. He'd smiled when he saw her bent over the sewing machine, strands of blonde hair falling into her eyes. "You have the hands of an artist," he'd said, and Emily, shy, hopeful, and unaware of how dangerous charm could be, had blushed. 4 years later, they were married and living in a sunlit penthouse on the Upper East Side, overlooking the quiet streets lined with maple trees and parked Mercedes. To everyone outside, they looked perfect, a couple blessed by success, youth, and beauty. Emily worked from home, sketching designs for private clients on her MacBook Air, sipping Starbucks vanilla lattes between fittings. Mike, now a lieutenant colonel, traveled frequently, attending ceremonies and meetings on various bases. But behind closed doors, their life wasn't golden. The early warmth had faded into cold silences. Mike's words had become sharper, his absences longer. Emily often woke to the soft hum of his phone lighting up at 2 a.m. When she asked, he'd brush it off. "Base communications, sweetheart." Classified. She wanted to believe him. After all, military life was full of secrets, wasn't it? Then came the pregnancy. The test strip had shown 2 pink lines one morning in late March. Emily had sat on the bathroom floor, trembling with joy. She had run to Mike with the news, expecting him to lift her off her feet. Instead, his smile was thin. "That's great," he'd said, already looking at his watch. Still, she convinced herself he was just nervous. She spent the next months preparing for motherhood, attending prenatal yoga, painting the nursery soft cream, reading Women Who Run with the Wolves every night to calm her racing thoughts. She wanted to believe love could heal everything. Her best friend, Sarah Campbell, a Manhattan lawyer with a sharp tongue and a kind heart, often stopped by with food and laughter. "You're glowing," Sarah said one evening, helping her fold baby clothes. Emily smiled faintly. "I'm just trying to hold it together." Sarah had noticed the tension but didn't press. Until one night, she arrived unannounced and found Emily sitting on the balcony, tears streaming down her cheeks, clutching Mike's iPad. On the screen, an image, a woman in a flight attendant uniform, smiling beside Mike at a gala, her hand resting too familiarly on his chest. You need to confront him," Sarah whispered. "I can't," Emily said weakly. "He's under too much pressure. Maybe it's nothing." But deep down, Emily knew. The gut instinct that had whispered to her for months finally screamed. The man who had once promised to protect her was hiding something she wasn't ready to face. So she began pretending everything was fine, pretending she didn't see the missed calls or the lipstick stain once left on his uniform collar. She told herself that love was patience, but every night, as she touched her growing belly, she wondered if her child could feel her fear. Then, just a week before the disaster at JFK, Emily decided to surprise Mike at the airport. She bought a new white dress, soft and simple, believing maybe a reunion would rekindle what they'd lost. She smiled at her reflection, whispering, "He'll be happy to see us." But fate had other plans that would shatter the illusion of their perfect marriage forever. The world Emily and Mike lived in looked flawless from the outside, a carefully painted picture of wealth, discipline, and class. Their penthouse sat high above East 74th Street, a glass-walled apartment filled with designer furniture, wedding photos, and the faint scent of Chanel perfume. Every morning, sunlight spilled through floor-to-ceiling windows, brushing over their white marble kitchen island and the bouquet of fresh lilies Emily replaced each week. She liked the illusion of peace. It made her feel like she still had control. Mike's world, however, was built on image. His polished black Mercedes S-Class always gleamed in the garage, his Rolex ticking steadily on his wrist like a badge of achievement. Every suit was pressed, every salute perfect. He had become a man, admired by colleagues and envied by neighbors. When they hosted dinner parties, guests would whisper how lucky Emily was, how her husband was the kind of man every woman dreamed of marrying. But Emily knew better. Behind every perfect photograph was a silence too heavy to explain. She spent most days working in her small home studio, sketching designs on her iPad, surrounded by bolts of silk and lace. Fashion was her refuge, the one place where lines and fabric obeyed her will. Outside her studio door, reality was unpredictable. Their evenings together had turned into a ritual of distance. Mike came home smelling faintly of bourbon and jet fuel. He'd drop his leather bag on the couch, scroll through his phone, and talk more about Air Force politics than about her day. "You wouldn't understand," he often said, not realizing those words chipped away at her heart. One Saturday, Emily prepared dinner: grilled salmon, steamed asparagus, his favorite lemon pie. She wore a soft blue dress that still fit her small bump and waited. He was late again. When he finally walked in, she noticed a faint smudge of lipstick on his collar, a shade too bright to be hers. "Rough day?" she asked gently. He poured himself a drink, not looking at her. "You have no idea. Maybe I'd understand if you told me," she said. Mike glanced up, his eyes sharp. "Not everything's about you, Emily." Her lips trembled. She turned away, staring out at the Manhattan skyline glowing against the night. Central Park stretched below like a dark ocean, calm on the surface, but hiding unseen depths. "I just want us to talk again," she whispered. He didn't answer. The sound of ice clinking in his glass was the only response. When he left for another conference the next morning, Emily stood by the window watching the Mercedes disappear into traffic. She tried to believe his words, but doubt had already taken root. Sarah's warnings echoed in her mind. "Men like him live double lives, Em. Don't let his uniform fool you." That night, she sat in her bedroom scrolling through her phone, pausing on a news photo Mike standing beside a group of military officials at a charity gala. And there, just at the edge of the frame, was a familiar face, the same flight attendant from the iPad photo. Jessica, young, confident, smiling at him like she belonged there. Emily dropped the phone onto the bed, her pulse hammering. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "He wouldn't do this to me. Not now." The city lights flickered through the curtains. Somewhere outside, a siren wailed. Emily pressed her hands to her belly, whispering, "I promise I'll protect you, no matter what." Then her phone buzzed a message from Sarah. "Call me. It's urgent. I found something you need to see." Emily's heart stopped. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the phone, her reflection pale in the window glass. And in that moment, she realized the life she'd been living might soon collapse like the perfect glass tower it appeared to be. Sarah Campbell had always been the one person Emily could call at any hour. They'd met in college at Parsons, back when Emily was still the quiet art student and Sarah was already arguing with professors about ethics and justice. Over the years, Sarah had become a successful lawyer in Manhattan, known for her sharp instincts and unshakable loyalty. She had also been one of Mike's earliest skeptics. "Something about that man feels rehearsed," she once told Emily after their wedding. Emily had laughed it off back then. Now, she wasn't laughing anymore. When Sarah's message appeared, "Call me, it's urgent," Emily felt the air leave her lungs. She dialed immediately, her fingers trembling. "Em?" "Yes, what's going on?" Sarah exhaled. "I don't want to scare you, but I saw something tonight. I was at a dinner near the plaza. A few Air Force officers were there, and so was Mike." Emily frowned. "That's impossible. He told me he was flying to D.C. for a meeting." "That's what I thought too," Sarah said softly. "But he wasn't alone. There was a woman with him. Flight uniform, red lipstick, laughing like she didn't have a care in the world." Emily's heart pounded. "Jessica," she whispered. There was a pause. "You know her?" "Just pictures. I didn't want to believe it." Sarah's tone hardened. "You need to stop pretending, Em. This man isn't just cheating. He's lying to protect himself, and I think it's about to get worse." Emily sank onto the couch, staring at the floor. The lights of Manhattan shimmered through the windows like broken stars. "Sarah, I can't deal with this now. I'm 7 months pregnant." "I know," Sarah said gently. "That's why you have to protect yourself. If he's this reckless in public, imagine what he's capable of in private." Emily's voice cracked. "I loved him, Sarah. I built my life around him. And now you have to rebuild it for yourself and your baby," Sarah replied firmly. "Listen, I have a client in private investigation. He owes me a favor. Let me find out what Mike's really doing. Emily hesitated, wiping tears with the back of her hand. I don't want revenge. I just want the truth. That's exactly what we'll get, Sarah said. I'll call you tomorrow. After they hung up, Emily sat in silence for a long time. The refrigerator hummed softly in the background, the baby mobile above the crib spinning slowly in the dim light. Her gaze drifted to the framed wedding photo on the mantel, Mike in uniform, smiling proudly beside her. She picked it up, studying his face, searching for the man she used to know. But now all she saw was distance. The next morning, Sarah arrived with coffee and a folder. I had him followed, she said, setting the Starbucks cups down on the kitchen counter. My guy took these last night. Inside the folder were photos Mike and Jessica leaving the plaza, holding hands, slipping into his car. Another showed them at a boutique on Fifth Avenue, laughing as Jessica tried on a diamond necklace. Emily's breath hitched. That's my credit card, she whispered. He used my card? Sarah nodded grimly. He's using your name to cover expenses. It's fraud, Em. Emily pressed her hand to her chest, the shock turning into cold anger. I trusted him with everything. Sarah touched her arm. Then take it back. Start with the evidence. Keep it. You'll need it soon. Emily nodded weakly, her resolve hardening beneath the fear. She stared at the photos again, at the lies that had paraded in daylight while she waited at home, believing. Her heart trembled, but her eyes burned with something new. And for the first time, Emily realized she might not be the helpless victim in this story. She might be the storm coming for him. The following week, Manhattan shimmered beneath a golden autumn sunset. The city looked calm from Emily's window, but inside her chest, a quiet storm gathered. She hadn't seen Mike in days. He claimed to be on base for classified duties. Yet she'd already learned that meant expensive dinners, champagne, and Jessica's laughter echoing somewhere across the city. Sarah urged her to keep acting normal. Play the part, she said. If he thinks you suspect nothing, he'll get careless. So Emily dressed carefully each morning, wearing soft cashmere sweaters over her growing belly, smiling for neighbors, sending polite texts to her husband. On the outside, she was still the perfect officer's wife. Inside, she was unraveling. Mike returned home one Thursday evening, whistling as if nothing were wrong. The elevator doors opened to reveal him in a pressed uniform, his cologne heavy in the air. There's a charity gala this weekend, he announced, loosening his tie. At the plaza. Military sponsors, journalists, the usual people. You should come. It'll look good for us. Emily blinked. You mean for you? He smirked. For both of us. Wear something elegant, something that says we're solid. She wanted to laugh. The hypocrisy stung like salt in an open wound. Fine, she said calmly. I'll be ready. That weekend, the Plaza Hotel glowed like a palace. Crystal chandeliers sparkled over polished marble floors, the air humming with music and money. Men in tuxedos clinked glasses of champagne while women floated in gowns worth more than rent for a year. Emily stood beside Mike at the top of the grand staircase, her Dior gown hugging her slender frame, her hand resting on her small bump. She felt everyone's eyes on her, the perfect wife of the perfect officer. Smile, Mike whispered through clenched teeth. You're representing me. She smiled, but it wasn't warmth, it was survival. Across the room, Emily's gaze froze. Jessica stood near the bar, laughing with a group of officers' wives, her hair cascading in glossy waves, a diamond bracelet glittering on her wrist. Emily recognized it instantly. It was the one Mike had bought last month, claiming it was for a charity auction. Her chest tightened. The walls seemed to close in. She turned toward Mike, who was already pretending not to notice. Stay here, she said softly, stepping away before her composure broke. In the ladies' lounge, she gripped the marble sink, staring at her reflection. Her eyes glistened, not just with tears, but with fury. Hold it together, she whispered. Not here, not tonight. She dabbed her face, fixed her lipstick, and forced herself to breathe. When she returned to the ballroom, Sarah was there, having arrived unannounced. "You okay?" she murmured. Emily nodded faintly. "He brought her here, Sarah. She's wearing my bracelet." Sarah's jaw tightened. "Then let's make sure everyone sees the truth, without you losing your dignity." The band began playing a slow song. Mike approached, smiling for cameras, and placed a hand on Emily's waist. "Dance with me," he said. She had no choice. They glided across the floor, faces inches apart but hearts miles away. To the crowd, they looked perfect. But under the golden lights, Emily's mind replayed the images, the receipts, the photos, the lies. When the song ended, she whispered, "You're good at pretending, Mike. Almost as good as you are at lying." He stiffened. "Watch your tone." "Or what?" she said softly, her voice trembling. "You'll embarrass yourself again in front of everyone?" His grip tightened on her hand. "Don't test me, Emily." She smiled sweetly. "You already failed the test." Sarah watched from across the room, sensing something breaking inside Emily. She knew this night would be remembered not for its glamour, but for the quiet start of a reckoning. Because beneath the glittering chandeliers of the plaza, Emily stopped being a victim and began becoming someone her husband would soon fear. The morning after the gala, the penthouse felt colder than usual. The sound of the city below, sirens, car horns, the soft hum of early traffic seemed distant, muffled behind layers of numb silence. Emily sat at the kitchen table in her silk robe, hands wrapped around a cup of lukewarm coffee she'd forgotten to drink. Her head throbbed from the tension of the previous night, but it wasn't exhaustion that haunted her, it was clarity. She had seen it clearly in his eyes at the plaza. Mike no longer respected her. Whatever love had once lived between them had rotted into something twisted: control, ego, and appearance. She'd married a man obsessed with winning, even when it came to his own wife. Mike emerged from the bedroom, freshly showered, crisp uniform perfectly pressed. "You made a scene last night," he said casually, pouring himself coffee as if he were commenting on the weather. Emily looked up slowly. "I didn't say a word, Mike. I just watched you play the doting husband while your mistress wore jewelry you bought with my money." His jaw tightened. "Careful." "Or what?" she asked softly. "You'll add another lie to your collection?" He turned, eyes narrowing. "You have no idea what you're talking about. Jessica's a contact, someone from the Air Force PR division. You're paranoid." Emily almost laughed. "Then maybe your PR division should stop sending you love notes at midnight." She opened her phone and slid it across the counter. On the screen, Sarah's latest discovery, a photo of Mike and Jessica sharing champagne in a private lounge, time-stamped during the exact hours he claimed to be on duty. His face drained of color for a fraction of a second before his mask returned. "You've been spying on me?" "I've been surviving," she whispered. "There's a difference." He slammed the mug down, coffee splattering across the marble. "You're losing it, Emily. You're emotional because of the baby. You don't understand the pressure I'm under." "Pressure doesn't make people cheat," she said. "Choices do." He stared at her with something dark in his eyes, something that made her instinctively place a hand over her belly. "You don't know when to stop," he muttered. "I stopped believing in you a long time ago," she replied, her voice breaking. The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. Mike grabbed his keys, storming toward the door. "You're pathetic," he hissed. "When I come back, I want this attitude gone, or I'll make sure you regret it." The door slammed so hard the windows trembled. Emily sat still for a long time, staring at the spilled coffee spreading like a dark stain across the counter. Her body trembled, but her mind was sharp. The fear she once felt had begun to turn into something else: resolve. That evening, Sarah stopped by again. "You okay?" she asked, concern etched into her face. Emily nodded faintly. "He's spiraling. But I think he's afraid now." "Good," Sarah said, setting down a brown envelope. "Then it's time to prepare." Inside were documents, financial statements, screenshots, and a bank record showing multiple luxury purchases under Emily's name. "He's using your accounts," Sarah explained. "If he gets caught, he'll try to pin it on you. We need to stay ahead." Emily felt her stomach twist. He'd destroy me to save himself. Sarah met her eyes. Then don't let him. Keep every receipt, every photo. We'll expose him, but only when you're ready. That night, as the city lights flickered against the penthouse walls, Emily curled on the couch, one hand over her belly, whispering softly to her unborn child. I promise no one will ever hurt us again. Her reflection in the window looked different, stronger, colder, awake. And while Mike believed he still controlled the story, Emily had just decided to rewrite it herself. The first snow of December drifted down over Manhattan like falling feathers, soft and silent. Emily sat by the window, sketching designs for her new winter collection, loose silhouettes for women expecting, made from wool and silk. But she wasn't thinking about fashion. Her mind was trapped in a loop, replaying Mike's threats, his tone, the cold emptiness in his eyes. Each passing day, she could feel him slipping further into darkness, and she knew something worse was coming. Sarah had warned her. Men like him never stop lying until they're forced to. That warning echoed now as Emily received an email from an anonymous sender. The subject line read, "You deserve the truth." Attached was a single video file. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The footage showed Mike at a military hangar, arm around Jessica, laughing as they stepped into a black car. In the background, someone said, "Colonel Grant sure knows how to use government perks." Emily's blood turned cold. The timestamp matched a date he claimed to be visiting Washington for a defense briefing. It wasn't just infidelity, it was corruption. That night, she called Sarah. "He's not just cheating, Sarah. He's using Air Force funds to cover his affair." "I have proof." Sarah paused, then said, "You need to be careful. If this gets out, it's not just a scandal, it's federal crime territory. You could be in danger if he finds out you have evidence." Emily exhaled shakily. "I'm done being scared. He destroyed everything I believed in. I won't let him destroy my child's life too." For the next few days, she played the part perfectly, still gentle, still accommodating. She cooked his meals, smiled at neighbors, and replied to his texts with warmth that masked her disgust. Meanwhile, Sarah helped her upload all the evidence, photos, receipts, videos, to a secure cloud drive under an alias. Emily even bought a small voice recorder, keeping it hidden in her Dior handbag whenever Mike was home. Then came the night everything cracked open. Mike arrived past midnight, reeking of whiskey. His uniform jacket hung loose, his eyes red and heavy. "You're still awake?" he muttered, tossing his keys on the table. "I was waiting," Emily said softly. "You didn't answer my calls." He scoffed. "Do I have to report every move I make to you?" "No," she said. "Just the ones you make with Jessica." The silence that followed was sharp as glass. His jaw clenched. "Watch it." "I'm done watching," she said, standing up. "I know about the money, the trips, the fake invoices you filed." He froze, staring at her like she'd just spoken a forbidden language. "What did you say?" "I know everything, Mike. You used military funds for your affair. I have proof." He stepped forward slowly, menacingly. "Where did you get that idea?" "From you," she whispered. "You were careless." He grabbed her arm, fingers digging into her skin. "You think anyone will believe you? You're a pregnant housewife. I'm a decorated officer. They'll laugh in your face." Her heart pounded, but she didn't flinch. "Maybe they will," she said. "But they'll still see the photos, the receipts, the video. And then they'll laugh at you." He froze. For the first time, fear flickered in his eyes. Emily pulled her arm free, her voice calm but deadly. "If you touch me again, I'll destroy everything you've built." He backed away, silent, breathing hard. She walked past him toward the door, whispering one last sentence before leaving for Sarah's apartment. "You should start rehearsing your apology, Colonel." The city outside was freezing, but Emily felt a strange warmth rising inside her chest. For the first time in months, she wasn't afraid of him anymore. Because buried in those secret files wasn't just evidence. It was the weapon that would end his reign of control forever. 2 weeks passed since Emily walked out of the penthouse that night. Manhattan had dressed itself in winter streetlights glowing through falling snow, shop windows lined with gold ribbons and Christmas songs humming faintly through the cold air. Emily stayed in Sarah's apartment downtown, a quiet space filled with books, the smell of vanilla candles, and safety. For the first time in months, she could sleep without fear of hearing keys turn in the door. But freedom came with emptiness. Every morning, she'd wake before sunrise, staring at the skyline beyond the frosted window. She had lost her home, her husband, and her sense of security. Yet, deep inside, something new was growing alongside the life in her belly, something strong, unbreakable. Sarah noticed the shift. "You're not crying anymore," she said one morning, handing Emily a cup of herbal tea. Emily smiled faintly. "No. I think I'm done being the woman he broke." That same day, Sarah arranged a meeting with a journalist she trusted, someone from the Wall Street Ledger, who handled military corruption stories. "You don't have to speak yet," Sarah said. "But when you're ready, your story will matter." Emily nodded but hesitated. "I want to do this right, not out of revenge, but to end the silence he hides behind." She spent the next week focusing on herself. Her days no longer revolved around Mike's moods or manipulations. She returned to her work, sketching again, designing with purpose. The dresses she created now carried emotion strength stitched into every seam. She'd look at them and whisper, "For women who survived." Sarah helped her file financial protection papers, ensuring Mike couldn't touch her accounts. Together they built a fortress of evidence: cloud backups, notarized statements, time-stamped videos. Each document was another brick in the wall separating her from the man who once controlled her life. Then came the makeover, not for vanity, but for rebirth. Sarah booked her a quiet appointment at a boutique salon in Soho. When Emily looked into the mirror, the reflection staring back wasn't the same frightened woman from weeks ago. Her hair, once soft and uncertain, now framed her face with confidence. Her eyes, once full of fear, burned steady with determination. Later, she bought herself a new outfit, a soft wool coat, black ankle boots, a Cartier watch she'd once admired but never dared to buy. It wasn't about luxury. It was about ownership. For years, Mike had dictated every choice, every purchase. This one was hers. That night, Sarah returned from work to find Emily typing on her MacBook Pro, the glow of the screen lighting her face. "What are you writing?" "A letter," Emily said softly. "To the Air Force Internal Affairs Division, with everything attached." Sarah blinked. "Are you sure? Once this is out, there's no going back." Emily's fingers paused over the keyboard. "There's nothing left to go back to." She hit send. The next morning, Emily walked through Central Park. Snowflakes landed gently on her coat as she felt the baby move for the first time. Tears filled her eyes, not from sadness, but from something else: freedom. She whispered, "We did it. Little one. We're safe now." Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number flashed across the screen. "You think you can destroy me? You'll regret this." It was Mike. Her heart raced for a moment, then steadied. She typed back, "No, Mike. You destroyed yourself." She slipped her phone into her pocket and kept walking, the snow crunching beneath her boots. The city around her glowed with life, and for the first time, she felt part of it again, not as a victim, but as a survivor reborn. And as Emily disappeared into the morning light, one truth became clear: the woman Mike had tried to silence was now the voice that would end him. San. The morning news broke like thunder across every channel. Air Force Colonel under investigation for misuse of government funds. The headline flashed on the TV in Sarah's living room as she and Emily sat frozen. Photos of Mike, uniform perfect, jaw clenched, appeared on the screen beside images of Jessica in her flight attendant uniform. The report detailed financial irregularities, unauthorized expenditures, and allegations of personal misconduct. Every word was a blade, cutting through the mask he had spent years building. Sarah turned to her. "You did it. The investigation's gone public." Emily's heart pounded, a strange mix of fear and triumph swirling in her chest. "He'll know it was me." "He'll suspect," Sarah corrected. "But he can't prove it." Outside, the city buzzed with winter chaos: horns, chatter, newsstands stacked with fresh headlines. The snow had turned to slush, the air sharp and electric. Emily wrapped her scarf tighter and whispered, "He's finally exposed." Across town, at a high-rise office near Wall Street, Mike was watching the same broadcast in disbelief. His superior officers stood in silence. "Is this true, Grant?" one demanded. Mike's throat went dry. "It's exaggerated. Someone's setting me up." But the evidence was overwhelming. The receipts, the falsified invoices, the private travel logs. Someone had built a case so airtight even the Air Force Legal Division couldn't ignore it. His phone buzzed relentlessly, texts from colleagues, calls from the base, messages from Jessica. He ignored them all, staring blankly at the screen as his once polished image crumbled. By afternoon, the story had spread online. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, everywhere. Videos surfaced from that night at JFK, showing his angry outburst. Someone had filmed everything. The torn dress, the shouting, the moment Emily collapsed. Now, millions were watching. In the comments, strangers wrote, "No man should treat his wife like that. That poor woman was pregnant. I hope she's okay." Emily's phone rang nonstop. Reporters wanted interviews. Advocacy groups offered support. She declined all of them, choosing silence for now. "It's not about fame," she told Sarah. "It's about justice." That evening, as the city lights flickered on, she received a call from an unfamiliar number. When she answered, she heard a trembling voice. "Emily, it's Jessica." Emily froze. "Why are you calling me?" Jessica sighed shakily. "Because I need to tell you something. Mike lied to me too. He said you were separated. He said you were unstable, that the baby wasn't his. I believed him until now." Emily closed her eyes. "You helped him hurt me." "I know," Jessica said, "and I'm sorry. I've already spoken to investigators. I told them everything about the fake travel expenses, the stolen funds, the nights he bragged about never getting caught." Emily's lips parted in shock. "You did that?" "Yes," Jessica whispered. "I'm done protecting him. You deserve peace." After the call, Emily sat still, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. It wasn't forgiveness she felt, it was release. The chain binding her to his lies had finally broken. 2 days later, the Air Force announced Mike's suspension pending a full inquiry. His name was stripped from official postings, and reporters camped outside his building. When he tried to reach Emily, his number went straight to voicemail. Sarah poured them both glasses of water that night, smiling gently. "You realize this is only the beginning, right?" Emily nodded. "Yes. But it's my beginning now." She looked out the window toward the Manhattan skyline, glowing gold against the dark winter sky. The city hadn't changed, but she had. The pain, the fear, the humiliation, all of it had led her here, to this moment of quiet victory. And as the world watched her husband's empire crumble, Emily knew the next chapter wouldn't be about revenge anymore. It would be about reclaiming her life. The winter sun poured through the window of Emily's new studio in Soho, washing over bolts of fabric, sketches pinned to corkboards, and a faint scent of jasmine tea. For the first time in years, she wasn't waking to the sound of orders barked across a penthouse or walking on eggshells around a man who measured love in control. Her mornings belonged to her again, to her designs, her baby, her peace. 3 months had passed since the scandal exploded. Mike Grant was no longer lieutenant colonel. The Air Force stripped him of rank, pay, and privilege. His name was now synonymous with disgrace. He'd tried calling her countless times, leaving voicemails that swung between apologies and threats, but she never answered. The restraining order Sarah helped her file kept him at a distance. The last message she'd received from him was a single line: "You ruined me." Emily hadn't ruined him. He had done that himself. She had simply stopped covering his sins. Her brand, once a quiet side project, was suddenly blooming. Orders for her maternity line, EW Resilience, poured in from boutiques around the country. Her designs spoke to women who had been silenced, shamed, or broken, and still found a way to stand tall again. Every stitch told her story without words. One afternoon, a black car stopped in front of her building. From it stepped General Robert Watson, her grandfather, the man who had spoken those famous words at JFK the night everything collapsed. The cameras had caught his line. "A man who raises his hand to his pregnant wife dishonors the uniform." The clip had gone viral, and his quiet dignity had reminded millions that integrity still mattered. He looked proud now, older but steady. "You did what many couldn't, Emily," he said, his deep voice softening. "You fought back with grace." Emily smiled faintly. "I didn't want revenge, Grandpa. I just wanted peace." "And you earned it," he said. "That's more powerful than any revenge." They talked for hours about the baby, how he'd already bought a tiny pair of boots and a silver rattle engraved with her initials. Before leaving, he placed a hand on her shoulder. "Remember," he said, "forgiveness isn't for them, it's for you." That night, as snow fell softly outside, Emily sat at her work table sketching the final piece for her new collection, a flowing ivory dress named Freedom. She imagined herself wearing it one day, standing under spring sunlight, holding her baby boy. At midnight, she closed her sketchbook and checked her phone. A message blinked on the screen. It wasn't from Mike this time. It was from the journalist who had first broken his story. "Emily, the Air Force has finalized the charges. He's been sentenced to dishonorable discharge and community service. They quoted your testimony in the final report." She stared at the message for a long time, then exhaled slowly. It was over, truly over. When morning came, she dressed carefully, a beige coat, a soft scarf, and her Cartier watch. She walked to Central Park, where sunlight glinted off melting snow. Sitting on a bench, she whispered to her unborn son, "Your father's story ended in shame, but ours begins in strength." People passed by, some recognizing her from the news. A few smiled respectfully. She smiled back, not as a victim, but as a woman reborn from her own ashes. Sarah joined her later, carrying 2 cups of hot chocolate. "You ready for what's next?" she asked. Emily nodded, eyes bright. "Yes. I think the world's ready too." As the city hummed with life around them, Emily felt her baby kick for the second time. The sensation filled her with quiet joy. She looked toward the sky, where clouds parted and light spilled across the frozen pond. And in that perfect moment, Emily knew her story wasn't one of tragedy. It was proof that even after betrayal, a woman could rise higher, shine brighter, and live freer than ever before. The days that followed felt almost unreal to Emily. The noise of scandal had faded into the distance, replaced by the hum of her sewing machine, the gentle rhythm of a life rebuilt from ashes. Each morning, she rose early to light a candle near the window, whispering gratitude for peace, a luxury she once believed she'd never feel again. Outside her Soho studio, spring was beginning to bloom. Trees along the street stretched out tiny green buds, and the cafe across the corner served iced lattes again. New York was waking up from winter, and so was Emily. She had moved into a small but warm apartment above her studio, filled with sunlight and the scent of fresh flowers. Her baby's nursery was almost ready, walls painted pale yellow, a soft crib beside the window, and a stack of children's books waiting on the shelf. Sarah stopped by often, bringing energy and laughter that balanced Emily's calm. "You realize you're trending again," Sarah said one afternoon, scrolling through her phone. "They call you the Soho Phoenix." Emily laughed softly. "I didn't ask for that name." "No," Sarah said, smiling. "But you earned it." Business was thriving. Her maternity line had caught the attention of a major fashion editor from Vogue Business, who wanted to feature her in a story about resilience and empowerment. Emily had almost said no. Public attention still made her uneasy, but Sarah convinced her. "You're not doing it for fame," she said. "You're doing it for every woman who thought she had to stay silent." The interview took place in her studio a week later. The journalist was kind, curious, and respectful. "How did you find the strength to start over?" she asked. Emily paused, touching the soft fabric draped over her mannequin. "I stopped trying to rebuild who I was before," she said slowly. "I decided to become someone new." When the article was published, it went viral. Headlines read, "From betrayal to brilliance, the woman who stitched her pain into power." Messages flooded her inbox, women from all over the country sharing their stories of heartbreak, survival, and renewal. Emily replied to each one personally, writing, "You are stronger than you think. Keep building." One evening, after a long day at the studio, Emily walked to Central Park. The sky was painted in gold and lilac, and the first cherry blossoms had begun to open. She sat on a bench, hands resting on her belly, feeling the gentle movement inside. "We're almost there, little one," she whispered. "A few more weeks, and I'll finally hold you." Just then, her phone buzzed. A message appeared from an unfamiliar number. "Mrs. Watson, this is Daniel Reed. I'm a producer with a documentary series about women who overcame domestic and emotional abuse. We'd be honored to include your story." Emily stared at the message for a moment, her heart tightening. She wasn't sure she wanted to relive the pain on camera. But then she remembered the faces of the women who had written to her, thanking her for giving them courage. Maybe her story could do more than heal her, it could heal others. That night, she sat by the window, city lights glittering beyond the glass. She opened her MacBook and began typing an email to Daniel. Her words came easily. "Dear Mr. Reed, I'll do it. But I want the film to focus on hope, not pain. I want women to see that healing is not weakness, it's victory." She hit send, then leaned back, exhaling deeply. For the first time since the nightmare began, she wasn't looking over her shoulder. The past had lost its grip. Ahead of her stretched a future built on courage, creation, and quiet light. And as the city pulsed softly around her, Emily realized she hadn't just survived, she had become a beacon for every woman still finding her way out of the dark. It was a calm Thursday morning when the past knocked on Emily's door, literally. The rhythmic tapping echoed through her Soho studio just as she was preparing sketches for her new spring collection. She expected a courier or maybe Sarah dropping by early. But when she opened the door, the man standing there froze her blood cold. Mike. He looked nothing like the man she had once married. His uniform was gone. Instead, he wore a wrinkled gray coat, his eyes hollow, beard untrimmed. He looked smaller somehow, like life had drained the power out of him. "Emily," he said softly, his voice cracking. Every instinct in her body screamed to slam the door, but she stood firm, gripping the edge. "You're not supposed to be here. The restraining order." "I know," he interrupted, holding up his hands. I needed to see you once. Please." She hesitated, studying the man who had once ruled her world with fear. The arrogance was gone. In its place stood a broken figure. "You have 2 minutes," she said flatly. Mike stepped inside slowly, eyes drifting around the studio fabrics, sketches, the glow of the morning light through tall windows. "You did all this," he murmured. "Without me." Emily's voice was steady. "I did it because of you." He winced, running a hand through his hair. "I lost everything, Em. My career, my reputation. Jessica's gone too. She left when the money ran out. I've been living out of my car for weeks." Her chest tightened for a brief second, pity trying to slip through the cracks, but she pushed it away. "You made those choices. I warned you." "I know," he said. "And I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted to see you, to tell you I'm sorry for everything. The yelling, the lies, the night at the airport." Emily's hand rested unconsciously on her stomach. "You almost cost me this baby, Mike." He nodded, tears filling his eyes. "I know. I live with that every day. I don't expect you to believe me, but I hate who I became." Silence filled the room. The city hummed outside, unaware of the storm quietly unfolding inside. Finally, Emily spoke. "You know what hurts the most? It wasn't the betrayal. It was that I kept trying to save you, even when you didn't deserve it." He looked down, shame covering his face. "I don't deserve your kindness now either. But seeing you like this, happy, successful, it's good. You won." She shook her head. "It wasn't a competition. I didn't win anything. I just survived." He swallowed hard. "Can I?" He paused, glancing toward her belly. "Can I know if it's a boy or a girl?" Her lips trembled for a second before she answered, "A boy. Due next month." Mike smiled faintly, the ghost of who he used to be flickering for a moment. "He's lucky. He'll have you." Emily said nothing. She simply crossed her arms, waiting for him to finish. He took a deep breath. "I'm turning myself in next week to finish the court process, the community service. After that, I'll probably leave New York. I won't bother you again." She nodded slowly. That's the right thing to do. He started toward the door, then turned back once more. Emily, thank you for not destroying me completely. You could have. And you didn't. She met his gaze. I didn't need to. You destroyed yourself. I just stopped standing in the way. He nodded, eyes glistening, and left quietly. When the door closed, Emily leaned against it, her heart pounding, but it wasn't fear this time, it was release. She looked around her studio, the soft morning light warming her face. The air felt cleaner somehow, lighter, because for the first time, the past had come back not to haunt her but to set her free. Sue. The morning began with the sound of rain tapping gently against the window pane. Emily stirred in her bed, the soft light of dawn painting golden streaks across the white walls of her Soho apartment. For weeks, she had been waiting for this day, feeling each kick, each twist of life inside her. But when the first sharp contraction gripped her stomach, she realized this wasn't waiting anymore. It was time. She grabbed her phone, wincing as another wave hit. "Sarah," she gasped. "It's happening. Stay calm. I'm on my way." Sarah's voice was a rush of energy through the receiver. Within minutes, she was at the door, coat half-buttoned, hair still damp from the shower. "All right, Mama," she said, grabbing the hospital bag. "Let's meet your little miracle." The drive through Manhattan was slow and wet, traffic lights glowing red on the slick pavement. Emily clutched Sarah's hand tightly in the back seat of the cab, breathing through each contraction. She stared out at the passing skyline, the same city where she had been broken and reborn. Now it was welcoming her into a new beginning. At Mount Sinai Hospital, nurses hurried her into a delivery suite. The sterile scent, the white walls, the beeping monitors, it all blurred together as the contractions grew stronger. Between breaths, she thought of her grandfather's words. "Forgiveness isn't for them, it's for you." She had let go of Mike, of anger, of fear. What remained now was love pure, unfiltered love for the life she was about to meet. Hours passed in waves of pain and silence. Sarah never left her side, holding her hand, wiping her forehead, whispering, "You're almost there, Em. You're the strongest woman I know." Finally, in one long cry that shook her entire being, Emily brought her son into the world. The nurse placed him on her chest, tiny, warm, perfect. He let out a strong, clear wail that filled the room with life. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "Welcome home, little one." Sarah's eyes shone. "He's beautiful," she said softly. Emily smiled through her tears, brushing a tiny strand of hair from her son's forehead. "His name is Noah." The hours after his birth were quiet, sacred. Emily lay in the hospital bed, cradling Noah, tracing every detail, his small fingers curling around hers, the steady rhythm of his breathing. For the first time in years, she felt whole. Later that evening, as the city lights glittered outside, there was a gentle knock on her hospital door. It opened to reveal her grandfather, General Robert Watson, holding a small bouquet of white lilies. "Grandpa," she whispered, eyes filling again. He smiled, his weathered face soft with pride. "So this is the young man who already has your strength." He stepped closer, touching Noah's hand. "You've done something remarkable, Emily. You turned pain into purpose." Emily looked at her baby, then back at him. "I think he saved me, Grandpa, even before he was born." The old man nodded. "He'll grow up knowing his mother never backed down, not from life, not from fear, not from truth." When he left, Emily lay there, rocking Noah gently, the hum of hospital machines fading into the background. Outside, the rain had stopped, replaced by a calm that felt almost divine. She whispered softly to her son, "You'll never know the darkness I walked through, but you'll grow under the light I built from it." Noah stirred, a faint smile crossing his tiny face, as if he understood. And in that quiet hospital room above the sleepless city, Emily realized her story had come full circle. The girl who once fell apart had now given life to the reason she would never fall again. 3 months after Noah's birth, Manhattan had shifted from the gray chill of winter to the early warmth of spring. The streets outside Emily's Soho studio were alive again, artists sketching on benches, baristas shouting names over the hum of espresso machines, the faint scent of tulips drifting from flower carts. Inside, Emily stood by the wide windows holding her son in one arm and a cup of coffee in the other, watching sunlight spill across her workspace. Her life felt unrecognizable from the one she'd known a year earlier. Gone were the whispers of fear and control, replaced by the laughter of a child and the rhythm of creation. She was no longer just surviving, she was building. Her brand, EW Resilience, had grown faster than anyone predicted. What began as a quiet side project for expectant mothers had turned into a phenomenon. Celebrities were spotted wearing her designs, talk shows requested interviews, and luxury retailers reached out from Beverly Hills to Fifth Avenue. But Emily wasn't driven by fame or profit. Every dress carried meaning, a reminder that beauty could rise from pain. Sarah, now both her best friend and business partner, handled the legal and financial side while Emily focused on design. "You realize," Sarah said one afternoon, flipping through sales reports on her iPad, "we're officially profitable. You did it." Emily smiled, rocking Noah gently in his bassinet. "We did it. You never let me quit." Sarah grinned. "That's because I knew you weren't meant to be hidden. You were meant to lead." The studio door opened, and a courier stepped in with a bouquet of white orchids and an envelope sealed with a gold crest. "Delivery for Miss Emily Watson." She opened it, frowning slightly. Inside was an invitation embossed in gold. "The Women of Influence Gala, the Ritz-Carlton, Central Park, honoring leaders who empower change." At the bottom, in elegant handwriting, were the words, "Special honoree, Emily Watson, founder of EW Resilience." Sarah gasped. "You're being honored." Emily's heart skipped. The Ritz-Carlton. The same circles that once whispered behind her back after the scandal now wanted to celebrate her. Life had come full circle, but on her terms this time. The night of the gala, the city shimmered beneath a violet sky. Emily arrived in a floor-length gown of her own design, silk the color of moonlight, simple yet breathtaking. Noah stayed home with her grandfather, who'd insisted on babysitting. "Go remind them who you are," he'd told her with a wink. Inside the ballroom, chandeliers glowed like captured stars. Guests turned as she entered, some recognizing her instantly. There were no whispers now, only admiration. The host's voice filled the room. "Tonight, we honor women who transformed adversity into strength. Please welcome Emily Watson." Applause rose, filling her ears with warmth. She stepped onto the stage, heart steady, eyes bright. For a moment, she thought of Mike, the man who once silenced her. Somewhere, he might be watching, realizing what he'd lost. But she didn't need his regret. Her victory spoke louder than his apology ever could. She took a breath and began. "There was a time when I thought my story ended in pain. But pain isn't the ending, it's the beginning of strength. Every woman here has a story, and every scar is proof that we survived." The room fell silent, the kind of silence born from hearts listening. "To every woman who's ever been broken, remember, you are not the ruins. You are the architect of what comes next." When she finished, the crowd stood, applause echoing like thunder. Cameras flashed, but Emily wasn't posing anymore. She was living. And as the lights bathed her in gold, Emily knew the empire she was building wasn't made of fabric or fame. It was made of the unshakable power of a woman who refused to stay broken. The night of the gala would be remembered as the moment Emily Watson became more than a survivor. She became a symbol. The Ritz-Carlton ballroom shimmered under crystal chandeliers, violins whispering through the air, as the city's most powerful gathered in their best attire. Cameras flashed like lightning. Emily stood poised near the stage, her gown of silver silk catching every reflection of light. She had learned how to stand tall, how to breathe, how to own the space that once terrified her. Sarah stood nearby, radiant in a sleek black dress, whispering, "You've got this, Em. The world's watching." Emily smiled faintly. "Let them." Across the room, conversations buzzed, fashion icons, journalists, CEOs, all eager to meet the woman whose story had captivated millions. A representative from Cartier approached, asking if she would consider a collaboration line. A film producer hinted at adapting her journey for streaming. Emily responded gracefully, but her thoughts stayed anchored on the speech she would soon give her final message of closure. Then, amid the glitter and noise, a ripple of silence spread across the crowd. Heads turned toward the entrance. A man stood there, uninvited, wearing a suit that looked borrowed and eyes that carried regret. Mike. Security moved instinctively, but Emily raised a hand slightly. "It's okay," she whispered to the guard. Her heart didn't race the way it once would have. Instead, she felt calm, almost detached, as if seeing a ghost that no longer had power over her. He walked closer, his steps hesitant, eyes glassy under the chandelier's glow. "Emily," he said quietly, voice barely carrying over the hum of the room. "I needed to see you." Sarah's hand found Emily's, but Emily didn't flinch. She faced him head-on. "You shouldn't be here, Mike." "I know," he said. I needed to tell you that you were right, about everything. I destroyed everything I had because I couldn't see what I already had in front of me." The people nearest them whispered, recognizing him from the old scandal. Phones began to rise discreetly, recording. Emily's tone remained steady. "You don't need to apologize here. Tonight isn't about the past, it's about what's possible after it." He swallowed hard. "I just wanted to say I'm proud of you." His voice broke. "And I'm sorry for the pain, for the fear, for the person I made you become." For a fleeting second, the weight of years pressed on her chest. But then she looked around the women in the room, the warmth, the power, the light. She realized she didn't hate him. She didn't need to. "Mike," she said softly, "I don't hate you anymore, but I don't forgive you for you. I forgive you for me, because I refuse to carry you with me any longer." His eyes filled with tears. He nodded, then turned toward the exit. Security followed him out quietly. Sarah squeezed her hand. "That was the most powerful thing you've ever done." Emily exhaled slowly. "No, the most powerful thing I've ever done was survive him." Minutes later, the host's voice echoed through the ballroom. "And now, our honoree of the year, Miss Emily Watson." Applause roared. She stepped to the microphone, every heartbeat echoing like a drum. The room went still. "Tonight," she began, "I stand before you, not as a victim, but as proof that, even in our darkest moments, light waits to be claimed. Pain may shape us, but it does not define us. What defines us is what we do after." Her eyes met the crowd, strong and bright. "To every woman who ever doubted her worth, remember, the moment you decide you are enough, you become unstoppable." The room erupted again, cheers, tears, applause, and as the spotlight wrapped around her, Emily finally understood this was never a night of revenge. It was a night of reckoning, where she reclaimed not just her story, but her soul. The morning after the gala, New York City woke beneath a blanket of golden light. Newspapers on every corner, kiosk bore Emily's face beneath bold headlines. "The Phoenix of Manhattan, Emily Watson's story ignites a movement." Photos from the event filled the front pages, her poised smile, the standing ovation, and that unforgettable moment when she stood face to face with the man who once broke her. Inside her apartment, the world was still. Noah slept peacefully in his crib near the window, his tiny hand curled into a fist. Emily sat at her kitchen table, sipping tea, the Cartier watch on her wrist glinting in the sunlight. She wasn't thinking about fame or recognition. She was thinking about how far she'd come from the terrified woman who once hid behind closed doors. Her phone buzzed endlessly, interview requests, brand offers, messages from women across the world thanking her for her courage. She read each one with quiet awe. One message stood out. It was from an anonymous woman in Texas. "Because of you, I packed my bags last night and left the man who's been hurting me for years. You saved more than yourself." Emily put the phone down, tears filling her eyes. She whispered, "That's why it all happened, so I could help someone else find her way out." Sarah arrived an hour later, carrying 2 lattes from Starbucks. "You made the front page again," she said, grinning. "And you broke the internet. Hashtag Emily Rises is trending #1. Emily laughed softly. "I guess the world likes a happy ending." No, Sarah said, sitting beside her. The world likes the truth. And you told it without shame. Emily reached over, squeezing her hand. Thank you for never leaving me. I wouldn't be here without you. Sarah smiled. You would have found your way. I just reminded you you had wings. They talked for hours about business, the upcoming expansion of EW Resilience, and a potential partnership with a major retailer. For Emily, success didn't feel like revenge anymore, it felt like redemption. She had turned pain into purpose, grief into growth. Later that afternoon, as she prepared to head to her studio, a letter arrived by courier. No name on the envelope, only her address written in a familiar hand. She hesitated before opening it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, the handwriting neat and deliberate. Emily, I kept my promise. I turned myself in for the remaining charges. I've started therapy and volunteering at a veterans center. I don't expect forgiveness, but I'm trying to become someone my son could one day respect. Take care of him for both of us. Mike. Emily stared at the letter for a long moment. There was no anger, only a strange calm. People changed, she thought, but some lessons had to be learned the hardest way. She folded the letter and placed it in a box beside her desk labeled The Past. That evening, she took Noah for a walk through Central Park. The air was crisp, the trees alive with new blossoms. She paused on a bridge overlooking the water, the same place she had once stood in tears months ago, certain her life was over. Now, with her son's tiny heartbeat against her chest, everything felt exactly as it should be. A group of young women nearby recognized her and waved. One called out, "Emily, you're amazing." She smiled, lifting Noah slightly. "No," she said gently. "We all are." The sun dipped low, casting long rays over the park. She looked out over the skyline Manhattan, bold and alive, reflecting her own resilience. And as the wind brushed through her hair, Emily realized the storm that once nearly destroyed her hadn't taken her power, it had given it back. The morning after the storm wasn't quiet. It was her victory song. San. 6 months later, the city had shifted into the lush rhythm of summer. Manhattan glimmered under long days and golden evenings, and the world that once knew Emily Watson only through scandal now knew her through strength. EW. Resilience had expanded to Los Angeles, London, and Tokyo. Her story had been featured in Forbes Women, and she'd been invited to speak at conferences about courage and rebuilding. Yet amid all the attention, Emily found her truest joy in the quietest moments, early mornings when Noah babbled in his crib, and evenings when she rocked him to sleep with the city lights flickering outside the window. One afternoon, she was sketching in her studio when Sarah appeared with a mischievous smile. "Someone's here to see you," she said. Emily raised an eyebrow. "A journalist?" "Nope," Sarah replied. "A potential investor, and a very charming one." Before Emily could protest, the door opened, and a tall man in a navy suit stepped in. He carried himself with quiet confidence, not arrogance, the kind of calm presence that filled a room without demanding it. "Miss Watson," he said, extending a hand. "Daniel Reed. I produce the Women Who Lead documentary series. We spoke by email months ago." Recognition sparked. "Yes," he said with a smile. "But after watching your gala speech, I think your story deserves its own film." Emily hesitated. "I'm not sure I want to live through all that again." Daniel nodded. "I understand. But maybe it's not about reliving it. It's about owning it. You've already taken back your story. Now you can share it on your terms." His words settled deep within her. She studied him, his sincerity, the warmth in his tone. He wasn't chasing headlines. He believed in stories that healed. "Let me think about it," she said finally. "Of course," he replied, slipping her a card. "No pressure." Over the next few weeks, Daniel visited the studio often to discuss creative ideas. Each time, their conversations drifted from work to life, books they loved, childhood memories, favorite places in the city. Emily found herself laughing again, the kind of genuine laughter she hadn't felt in years. Daniel never asked about Mike, never tiptoed around her past. He treated her as she was, now a woman, not a victim. One evening, after a long shoot, they walked through Central Park. Fireflies glimmered along the paths, and the city hummed softly in the distance. Daniel looked at her, the golden light reflecting in his eyes. "You know," he said gently, "you don't have to keep proving you're strong. You already are." Emily stopped walking, emotion catching in her throat. "For so long, I didn't know how to exist without pain," she admitted. "But now I just want peace." He smiled. "Then maybe peace is exactly what you've earned." When they reached her building, she thanked him for the evening. As she turned to leave, he said, "Emily, if someday you decide you're ready to trust again, I'll be here. No expectations, just presence." She stood still, the city lights glinting off the wet pavement. "Thank you," she whispered. That night, after putting Noah to bed, she looked at herself in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't the same one who once lived in fear. She had scars, yes, but they shimmered now, like proof of survival. The next morning, she emailed Daniel, "Let's make the film. But not about what I lost, about what I found." And for the first time since everything fell apart, Emily felt the gentle stirring of something new, not dependence, not fear, but the beginning of trust. Because sometimes, after the storm clears and the ashes settle, life doesn't just give you peace, it gives you a second chance to love again, stronger and wiser than before. The first day of filming began on a bright September morning. The Soho studio smelled faintly of coffee and new fabric, sunlight spilling through the wide windows, as the film crew arranged cameras and soft lights. Emily sat quietly in front of the mirror, Noah's baby photo framed beside her makeup kit. She touched the small silver pendant around her neck, an engraved N for Noah, and exhaled slowly. Daniel stood nearby, reviewing notes with the director. When their eyes met through the reflection, he smiled gently. "You ready?" "As I'll ever be," Emily said, her voice steady but thoughtful. The cameras began rolling. The documentary, titled Threads of Strength, would follow her journey from heartbreak to rebirth. But it wasn't meant to expose pain, it was meant to illuminate how one woman rebuilt her life through courage and creativity. "Tell me about the first time you realized your life had changed," Daniel prompted softly from behind the camera. Emily paused, her eyes unfocused as memories flickered. JFK Airport, flashing lights, that single moment of collapse. "It wasn't when he betrayed me," she said finally. "It was when I looked in the mirror and realized I didn't recognize myself anymore. That was the day I decided to start over, not for revenge, but for survival." The crew was silent, captivated. Her words carried no bitterness, only quiet power. Later that afternoon, they filmed scenes of her at work, cutting fabric, sketching designs, smiling as Noah crawled near her desk. Daniel watched from behind the monitor, admiring not just her resilience but her grace. She didn't perform for the camera, she lived honestly in front of it. During lunch, they sat outside on the studio balcony, overlooking the cobblestone streets. Emily sipped iced tea while Daniel scrolled through footage on his tablet. "You know," he said, "when people see this, they won't just see your pain. They'll see what healing looks like." Emily smiled faintly. "That's all I ever wanted, to turn my scars into a roadmap for someone else." He looked at her for a long moment. "You've done more than that, Emily. You've shown what freedom looks like." Weeks passed as they filmed interviews, Sarah, General Robert Watson, even former clients who credited Emily's story for inspiring them to start over. The documentary became more than just a film. It became a movement. Previews leaked online, and soon the trailer went viral. The comment section filled with messages. "This saved me. I'm not afraid anymore. Thank you for showing us that broken doesn't mean finished." When the premiere night finally arrived, the River Cafe in Brooklyn hosted the event beneath the glittering skyline. Guests gathered on the terrace, laughter and anticipation floating through the air. Emily arrived in a black silk gown, Noah in her arms, Sarah and Daniel beside her. As the lights dimmed and the opening scene filled the screen, the room fell into silence. Emily's voice narrated over the first shot of the Manhattan skyline. "They tried to define me by what I survived, but I decided to define myself by what I became." For 90 minutes, the audience journeyed through her life, pain, courage, creation, and light. When the credits rolled, no one moved. Then came the sound of applause, thunderous, endless. People stood, clapping, cheering, some wiping tears. Emily turned to Daniel, eyes wet. "We did it." He smiled. "No, you did it." She looked around the room, at strangers moved by her truth, and something inside her settled. She wasn't just the woman who had survived. She was the woman who had taught survival. As the city lights shimmered beyond the glass, Emily held Noah close, whispering, "This is for you, my little one. You were my reason to rise." And as the audience stood to honor her courage, Emily realized her story had outgrown her. It now belonged to every woman who had ever dared to begin again. The weeks following the premiere of Threads of Strength felt like living in a dream she hadn't dared to imagine. The film had broken streaming records within days, trending across platforms and filling her inbox with thousands of messages from women around the world. "Your story gave me courage. I finally left. You made me believe in myself again." But behind the success and attention, Emily's life remained simple. Her mornings still began with Noah's laughter echoing through the apartment, the smell of oatmeal and baby lotion filling the air. She preferred the quiet moments, the small hands reaching for her face, the soft hum of the city outside. That, she often thought, was what real happiness looked like. Yet, something new had begun to bloom quietly in the corners of her life. Daniel. Since the documentary's release, they had remained close, working together on post-production interviews and charity events inspired by her story. What began as professional admiration slowly deepened into something gentler, something she hadn't felt in years. He never pushed, never crossed boundaries. He simply showed up helping her carry Noah's stroller down subway stairs, bringing her coffee before early shoots, listening when she spoke, and never trying to fix her pain. One evening in late October, they met at the River Cafe, again to celebrate the film's nomination for a humanitarian award. The city shimmered across the East River, its reflection dancing in the dark water. Daniel raised his glass. "To strength," he said, "and to new beginnings." Emily smiled, clinking her glass softly. "To peace," she replied. They talked for hours, long after most guests had left, the night air growing cool around them. She found herself telling him stories she'd never shared before. The day she almost gave up designing, the nights she'd cried herself to sleep while pregnant, the small victories that had carried her forward. He listened, his gaze never leaving her face. When she finally stopped, embarrassed by her own vulnerability, he said quietly, "You know what amazes me, Emily? You talk about your pain like it's something fragile, but you wear it like armor. That's rare." She looked at him, words caught in her throat. "I stopped believing in love, Daniel. It cost me too much the first time." He nodded. "Then don't call it love. Call it peace. Call it companionship. Whatever you call it. It doesn't have to hurt." The simplicity of his words disarmed her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The wind tugged gently at her hair, and the sound of the river filled the silence between them. Finally, Daniel reached across the table, not to take her hand, but to set his over it lightly, an invitation, not a demand. "You don't have to decide tonight," he said. "Just know that when you're ready, I'll still be here." Emily's eyes softened. For the first time in years, she didn't feel the panic that usually came with closeness. She felt calm, safe. She nodded slowly. "Maybe I'm not ready yet," she said softly, "but I think I want to be." He smiled, that quiet, patient smile that had become so familiar. "Then we'll take it one day at a time." When she returned home that night, Noah was asleep, his tiny body curled under a soft blanket. Emily stood beside his crib, brushing his hair gently. "Mommy's learning how to be happy again," she whispered. "You showed me it's okay to try." Outside, the city glowed beneath 1,000 windows. She looked out at it, feeling the gentle rhythm of her own heartbeat, steady and full. Because sometimes love doesn't come roaring back like a storm, it arrives softly, like dawn after a long, dark night, reminding you that light was always meant to find you again. A full year had passed since the night of the gala, and New York felt different now, gentler, warmer, like a city that finally exhaled with her. The air carried the scent of spring rain, and the streets shimmered beneath soft sunlight. Emily stood at the window of her Soho apartment, watching Noah play with a wooden train on the rug. His laughter filled the room, bright and pure, echoing against walls that had once heard only silence. Her company, EW Resilience, had just opened its first flagship store on Fifth Avenue, a place designed not only to sell clothing, but to tell stories. Each section carried quotes from women who had rebuilt their lives, and a corner display honored survivors of abuse and injustice, with proceeds supporting shelters across the country. It wasn't just fashion anymore. It was a movement. On the morning of the grand opening, Sarah arrived early, holding 2 cups of coffee and grinning. "Can you believe this, Em? Fifth Avenue, you did it." Emily laughed softly. "We did it, Sarah. You were there when it all fell apart, remember?" Sarah smirked. "And now I get to see it all come together. It's poetic." The store opening drew hundreds: journalists, customers, advocates, even former military wives who had written to Emily over the months. Cameras flashed as she cut the ribbon, Noah on her hip, Daniel standing a few steps back, smiling quietly like he always did. The crowd erupted in applause, and Emily felt tears blur her vision. She stepped to the microphone, her voice steady but warm. "A year ago, I thought my story had ended. But what I've learned is that endings are just disguised beginnings." EW. Resilience isn't about clothes, it's about courage. It's a reminder that you can be broken and still be beautiful. You can lose everything and still create something worth living for. The audience cheered, many wiping their eyes. Sarah squeezed her shoulder. "You just made half of Fifth Avenue cry," she whispered. As the day went on, people wandered through the store, sharing stories and taking photos beneath a mural that read, "She remembered who she was, and the game changed." Later that evening, after the crowd had faded and the lights dimmed, Emily walked along the display racks, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor. Daniel appeared beside her, holding a glass of sparkling cider. "To your empire," he said, raising it toward her. She smiled, clinking her glass against his. "To peace." They stood for a moment, watching the city glow through the massive windows. "You know," he said quietly, "the documentary got nominated for an international award. We're heading to Paris next month for the ceremony." Emily's eyebrows lifted. "Paris?" He grinned. "I hear it's a good place for new beginnings." She laughed, shaking her head. "You and your metaphors." When she returned home that night, Noah was asleep, clutching his stuffed bear. She kissed his forehead and whispered, "You're the reason everything changed." She looked around her apartment, the photos on the wall, the quiet hum of peace that filled the air, and realized she no longer felt the weight of what she'd lost, only gratitude for what she'd built. Outside, the city glimmered like a promise. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, business deals, motherhood, maybe love, but she was ready. She had learned that strength wasn't loud or sharp. It was steady, soft, and enduring. As she sat by the window, a light breeze carrying the sound of distant laughter, Emily smiled to herself. "We made it," she whispered, because in the end, her story wasn't about the man who broke her, or the pain she survived. It was about the woman she became afterward. And as the city lights shimmered below, Emily Watson finally knew. This was not a comeback. This was her forever. So, that's how Emily's story ends. Or maybe, how it truly begins. Hey, my dear friends, you're still here, aren't you? If you've stayed with me all this way, then something in Emily's journey must have touched your heart, even just a little. Maybe it reminded you of your own battles, or maybe it whispered that healing is still possible even after everything. Her story isn't just about pain or betrayal. It's about rebuilding, about choosing peace over anger and growth over grief. Like Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." And Emily showed us exactly that when she changed her thoughts, she changed her world. We all have moments when life breaks us. But those cracks aren't endings, they're invitations to rebuild, stronger, wiser, softer. The Stoics believed that pain is not our enemy. It's our teacher. And just like Emily, you too can rise from it not by forgetting, but by forgiving, by moving forward with quiet strength. If this story moved you, my friend, let's keep this energy alive. Like, share, and subscribe so together we can keep reminding each other that no darkness lasts forever and no soul is too broken to heal.